I'm no good at taking good advice, and I'm self-careless, so don't tell me twice that lately I've been so stuck in my head that I forget just about everything my therapist said. Maybe I'm self-helpless, maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe we are all self-helpless.
Hey everyone, welcome to Self-Helpless. I'm Delaney Fisher, and today I'm chatting with Natalie Katona, who wrote into us for the series we've been doing called Subscriber Stories, where we're featuring you on the podcast amidst our usual programming. And Natalie wrote in with a couple great topics. She wants to share her experience being the long-term single person in her family, and she also mentioned eldest daughter syndrome. So we're discussing a mix of both in today's episode. And by the way, eldest daughter syndrome is a term that describes the unique challenges and responsibilities that can affect the oldest daughter in a family, including feeling a strong sense of responsibility, being an overachiever, people pleasing, boundary issues, guilt. So, the oldest daughter may take on a lot of the caregiving, emotional support, and homemaking responsibilities in a household. And of course, it depends on a family dynamic. It's not the same for everyone, but these are just the patterns of behavior that have been found that may be typical to this type of position in the family. So, Natalie shares how she handles unsolicited questions about being single at 35, what kind of boundaries she's put in place with family around being the oldest daughter and granddaughter. She talks about creating her own traditions, how she feels about having a life partner, and lots more. So, here is my chat with Natalie. So you sent in two amazing topics. I could not pick between them. So I think we're just going to do a little bit of both and see how maybe they're connected for you in your life and talk about it that way. So you sent in being the long-term single person in your family and eldest daughter syndrome and its effects on your relationships. So before we get into those a bit and maybe even how they are related for you, can you share a little bit about yourself?
So currently I am 35 years old. And because my friend recently celebrated their 34th birthday, I almost said the wrong age.
I was going to say, are you talking about me? Because I just turned 34 too.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie.
exactly. I'm the oldest daughter. It's just me and my sister. My parents divorced when I was graduating college. So for the majority of my childhood, I lived in a two-parent household. I'm also the oldest granddaughter on my mom's side. And I grew up in the Midwest. And as a woman in her 30s who has done a lot of work decentering all of the constraints and the conservative notions that were put on her just naturally going through elementary school, high school, college, and the majority of her adulthood in the Midwest, and not really having a really big world viewpoint and a really diverse community to work in. I've started to really just like sit there and go, what is it about eldest daughters that makes it so hard for us?
Well, it's so interesting. When I saw you write in, I didn't even know this was a thing. So I went on a deep dive and I'm like, holy shit, this is me too. It's eldest daughter syndrome. It's not eldest child or,
No.
the oldest of the family. And it's very interesting to read that a lot of parents will put a lot more responsibilities on the oldest daughter, even if that daughter has an older brother or several, because the daughter, is seen as more responsible, more nurturing, more this and that. And so you could be a freaking middle child and have this like
Hmm.
sense of overwhelming responsibility for your family, even though you got, somebody 5, 10 years older than you. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. We're not going to leave the kids with Johnny. He'll light the
Yeah.
place on fire. I thought that was really interesting. It does not matter the age. How do you think being the single person in the family and being the eldest daughter intermingles, if you will?
So I think my annoyance with being the long term single child of the family was really prevalent in my 20s before I was really secure in who I am. And now that I've gained a little bit more confidence and security, I can kind of start to let go of the idea that I'm not a whole person unless I'm partnered in my family and instead go, actually, you all rely too much on me because I am the eldest daughter, and I've been going through it alone so often. And you just believe that I'm fine. One of the ways that my mom will accidentally hurt my feelings is she'll try to compliment me and she'll be at my house and she'll be like, and Natalie, I just knew that I didn't have to worry about you during the pandemic like I had to worry about your sister because
Oh.
you've always been fine. And I'm like, "Oh, mom, thanks." And then immediately like run into my bathroom and like text cry my best friend to be like, "Mom hurt my feelings again by calling me strong."
Oh my gosh. Yes, you're so independent. We know that you
Yeah.
got yourself. And so let's focus all of our attention and energy onto the younger ones who
Yes.
really need the help. But why do they need the help? Maybe because they're not you're not allowing them to step up a little bit by maybe
Yes.
spreading the attention in certain ways, potentially. Because I'm the oldest of four, but my age gap is very large with my siblings. I mean, the second oldest daughter, we have an 11 or 12-year age gap. So I was the oldest up to a certain point, and then I went to college and moved out and never came back to live at home. And so she became the eldest daughter in the household. And her and I are very similar in a lot of ways of you may be taking on too much responsibility, burnout, fiercely independent in a lot of ways, having a hard time letting other people do stuff for us. And I think she's kind of at that point too, where she realizes she has to set some boundaries around that, or else she's just going to be busy all the fucking time.
All the
Um,
time.
and so, what are some ways that you have been able to kind of spot certain things and then set a boundary, whether it's, in the moment or afterwards, anything along those lines?
A clear cut example is I was also born on Christmas. So, one of the fun things about being born on Christmas and being an eldest daughter is you're usually amidst all of your trigger points on your birthday. Sometimes my dad would only acknowledge my birthday on the 23rd to not hurt anyone else's feelings on Christmas. And
Anybody's feelings. It's your
exactly.
birthday. Okay.
Exactly. So, a couple years ago, my best friend and I, our holiday anxiety was always already starting to ramp up. And I told her, I go, well, what do we do? Like, what do we do to take back? And her husband normally has to work on Christmas Eve because of how shifts fall and overtime and stuff. And she goes, I say we have like a hot girl Christmas and we take her kids to something exciting so that they're occupied by and marveled while we take like hot girl Instagram pictures of ourselves to be like, it's hot girl Christmas.
New
So
trend.
new trend. So one year we did one of those igloo dining experiences where you're in the inflated heated igloo on a farm, gave her kids some iPads and we were like, it's our time now. And then the next year, we went to the Science and Industry Museum in Chicago. Because I'm a type A personality and because I know that if anything's going to get messed up, it's my plans because I'm the single person. I'm an over communicator when I'm not acting in the norm. So, like, I would tell my dad in July, like, okay, so Stephanie and I are planning this, that, and the other. And when I tell you that every year that we've tried to do it, my dad has called me 2 weeks beforehand to be like, so our Christmas plans have changed. And now you have to be here Christmas Eve at these times. And I've just gone, no, we've
Yeah.
made reservations.
You said you have a sister, is that right? A younger
Yes.
sister? Have a partner, married?
Married with a 1 year old.
So is it the fact that kind of your parents, your family kind of plans around the sister, the baby, right? What
Well,
needs to happen with their schedule?
and my dad is also newly married. And it's
Mm,
just the constant battle of being like,
yeah.
my day matters too. When I was in my 20s and my sister got married in her 20s and he's been around for a while. Uh the thing of it was we'd go on vacation and they'd be like, and we made sure to get this Airbnb with all of these spacious, beautiful bedrooms. And look, Natalie, there's a couch. It's so nice. It's right there in front of the TV.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're single, we can just kinda throw you anywhere,
Yes.
right? I mean, I'm resonating with this a lot from the perspective that I don't have kids, I don't want kids, and pretty much everybody in my family has them. Those kind of the questions that I get, or kind of similar situations like, oh, you're probably available. You can just come at a moment's notice, or, whatever. I have a life too, just because I don't have children. Like, I still have value. I have inherent value, even though I'm not reproducing a child. You have value, even if you do not have a romantic partner. Like, it's just very strange the way society treats us.
So they also believe that I can travel at a moment's notice.
You also have
And
time travel abilities. I didn't realize this, Natalie. This changes the game a little bit.
I dream of Genie. And the pressure that I will put on myself to be like, I can travel at a moment's notice. Who am I? I get in the car and drive for 4 hours. Who even cares? We're all either in Ohio, Indiana, or Illinois. There's no way for me to just like hit everyone on a line that makes sense. We're in some weird pentagram that adds 3 hours to my trip, no matter where I'm heading. So
Yeah.
when you have a blended family and you have other people who are important in your life, I can't just be at the beck and call of what you've decided is important or an emergency. And like, I have to be a flexible person and also be the person who's holding up my boundaries.
How do people treat you when they find out that your age and that you're single? And whether that's in your family, outside of your family, do most people make comments? Do most people not?
My favorite reaction is always, oh my goodness, Natalie, we couldn't even imagine. You got in the car, you drove 6 hours, and they're so in awe of you that you're just giggling. And you're like, I know, I figured out the highway.
Because you did it on your own? This is why they're
Yes.
so, oh my.
To be fair, one of my great aunts never learned how to drive.
Okay.
So
So it is pretty miraculous for her. Yeah.
it is. But
Yes.
yeah, they're always just in awe. A lot of the time, I think I have naturally been pushed out of friend groups because I no longer fit what their friendship dichotomy is. Like, oh, it's time for us to have husbands and babies. It almost makes you feel like you can't ever say no because then you'll just stop being invited to begin with.
Mm.
I don't know if this ever happened to you, but did you ever look at a Lisa Frank folder and go, wow, I really like dolphins? So then for the next several hundred years of your life,
You
everyone
only
bought you a dolphin.
gifted dolphin.
Yeah, you were only ever gifted dolphins. I think that that never goes away because if you say, no, I don't want to go to the lake shore, then all of a sudden they're like, Natalie hates the lake shore. She never wants to be at the beach. She hates the sand. She hates the dunes. She hates Lake Michigan. And it's like, no, I just didn't want to go that day.
But what? Because you're like the older, more independent. Like, well, she's made up her mind forever. But the other one,
Forever.
let's check in each time to see how the other one's feeling that day.
She loves dolphins. She hates the lake. So I always have to be really careful about what I don't participate in because I'm like, I'll never have birthday cake again. Because I personally think
Interesting.
that
Yeah.
one of the most awful things you can be as the single childless friend is the only single childless friend at a children's birthday party.
Oh, yeah.
There's no booze. There's a clown or someone doing at close magic. Your friend, a person that you love, is so stressed out about whether or not their kid is going to open presents correctly. And your logical brain is like, don't make them open presents in front of these people then. If no one can handle it and we're all going to cry anyways, then let's just not do it.
Do you ever try to bring like a +1 to something like that?
I brought a TikTok friend to my dad's wedding.
All right, there you go.
It was right after I had told my family, like, it needs to stop with the, well, we can set you up with so and so, blah, 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 blah. He's got a job in a car. Like, stop it.
When you get invited to weddings, and usually a +1 is only
Mhm.
given if somebody has a significant other. And so, have you been in a position where you don't get a +1 or you do, and then people are like, "Well, why did you bring your friend as a +1?" You know what I mean? Like anything like that.
So, luckily, I was bred and born to love weddings because my mom's side of the family is my great grandparents immigrated from Croatia. And
Mm.
then, like, a majority of my mom and my grandpa was one of eight, and a majority of my mom's cousins and aunts and uncles still stayed in the area. So I've grown up with hundreds of cousins, which means I've gone to third cousins' weddings, eighth time removed cousins' weddings. You found out at 15 that this guy isn't actually your great uncle. He was just a really good friend to your grandpa. Those kind
That's
of
your
events.
jam. Yeah,
That's my
love it.
jam. Croatian weddings are off the chain because you get real drunk real fast and then you polka and the DJ's always good and it's always the hits. And so I love a wedding. And I'm
Okay, nice.
also pretty lucky to where, like, if I feel like we haven't talked in a while and I'm not going to know at least 3 people there, then I'm not going. Like, I can
Mm.
also just opt out of a wedding if I don't think it's going to be fun. But yeah, my dad's wedding was the only time I put my foot down and was like, I'm going to bring something. And my dad was like, well, Stephanie and her husband are already invited. I was like, yes, thank you for inviting my family. I will also be bringing a date.
Yeah. Do you want to have a romantic partner or life partner, or is that of interest to you, or do you just not want that? Because it's interesting how society can make us feel like shit either way. Whether,
Yeah.
no, you're actively seeking it and it hasn't happened yet, they make you feel like shit about that, or you just don't want that for yourself and then they make you feel like shit about that, like there's something wrong with you. So where are you at with that?
It's terrifying going through a second adolescence when you're 35 years old and having to figure out how to date women. Like, to be
Mm.
like, I know how boys operate, and I know that I've actually never cared when a boy vacated the vicinity and left me. Like, that wasn't devastating. I usually got over it pretty quick. But women, the people who have held me up and cradled my emotions and broken into my house to deliver juice when I'm sick, to like literally date a woman and then the prospect of messing that up and having to learn first off, I'm a perfectionist. What if I had to learn something new? It's so terrifying. And I'm so lucky that when I move, I will have a lot of access to Chicago, which is a bigger city, which I hope kind of has a bigger LGBTQ community than where I'm currently at. Because I would just like to start feeling like I belong in that community before I start thinking like, what does living a Glennon Doyle type of love story look like? It all seems so impossible right now. I also hate dating apps. I hate the way that we date now.
Yeah.
It infuriates me, it frustrates me, it also kind of bores me. So I also have to like somehow get a meet cute going.
Well, I guess if you walk into like any kind of like fun club, bar, activity,
Yeah,
event, when you are in that environment, you'll probably be able to meet people in real IRL, right? Is that how
I
it goes?
hope. Yes,
In
I
real
think
life.
that's what the kids call it.
That's what the kids say. That you maybe the apps won't be a necessary tool that you need to use.
I hope so because I don't have the patience for it.
Yeah. So you have dated men in the past, and then when did you realize that you were actually attracted to women?
It was after a bad relationship that gave me a pretty mediocre breakup, and it was my friend, she said something about Jesus, and I was like, "Would you like to hear about my religious trauma for an hour and a half?" And I go, and then I never even considered being gay because, like, it would have upsetted, I don't know, God and my dad. She goes,
Mm,
"Are you saying that you should have considered it all along?" She goes, "How much of your life has been because you thought that you were going to disappoint someone?" Which I
right.
think is a huge eldest daughter trait too. Like, if you're a person who's constantly trying to live up to other people's expectations and you know that the quickest way to mangle one of those, you'll have grandchildren for me to spoil expectations and
Mhm.
have a man that I can have brewskis with as your husband,
Right.
is to be gay, then no wonder you just kept pushing that off to be like, I'll date men. It's fine.
So interesting. Do you feel like because of the whole eldest daughter syndrome, do you feel like you've grown up thinking, "Well, I don't really need anybody," because of that position in your family? Like, how do you feel about that?
It's going to be weird because as soon as a man entered my life romantically, I immediately became a trad wife who like played this role of perfect girlfriend. And I
Mm,
feel like a lot of my childhood has just been, and my youth and my experiences dating has just been like main character play acting. And so I don't actually know what entering a relationship will be like with someone that I actually want to invest in
Mm,
because I don't know if I've ever dated authentically. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Instead of just like begging them to want me around. I feel like in a majority of my relationships, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who felt this way, you just feel like this constant need to be like, don't worry, I'm perfect. Don't worry. So yeah, it's one of those things where I I don't know how it's gonna go. It's just like a big blank in front of me.
Have you been in situations where, on both ends of the spectrum, like, wow, I am so glad that, I'm single and, this is my life over here. And then on the other end, have you been in a situation where I'm feeling sad and left out of what everybody else is doing around me? Like any experiences like that?
It's like the security of what a partner brings you. There's going to be someone who notices that you're choking in the middle of the night. And when I was younger, going to things like Christmas by myself, when my family was kind of in flux after my parents' divorce, and I felt like there was a lot of manipulation and gaslighting and projecting of feelings going on,
Mm,
it would have been lovely to have had, like, a nonpartisan member of my life be there, so when I'm crying in the car, they can go, "Yeah, no, that was nuts." Like, that
right,
no one
right.
should ever say that to you, but I never had the luxury. Like, just that constant self-talk that you wish someone else was there to be like, "No, that was a really shitty thing. That in no way was that in any way how you should have been treated, and that was hard." Instead, you just have to, like you have to rely on your friends, like, believing you. I've always said that, like, because I'm not partnered, no one is actually not forced, but no one has the responsibility to care about me. And instead, I have to put in a lot of time to make sure that I am a person that people wanna care about. And I believe that we should work to make sure that we're people that people should care about. But there comes, like, this silent contract where, like, no, your partner cares about you no matter what. And,
Mm,
like, friends get busy, it
right.
turns out. Everyone has their own life. Recent This past Christmas, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and it's going
Oh,
very well, and that's why I'm okay to talk about it, like, surgeries, all of it, like, we've nipped it. But it's Christmas, and it's my nephew's first Christmas, and my mom has to tell us that she has cancer, happy birthday to me. I
oh, God.
remember being like, "I can't tell Julia because Julia loves Christmas." I like, just running through the list of, like, who am I allowed to share this moment with because my mom's trying to pretend like everything's okay because we're having Christmas. My sister and her husband probably are just like whisper talking about it in the bedroom that they're set up in. And I just keep like flushing tears out of my face. So I finally just like texted my best friend and I was like, hey, are we still pretending to have Christmas magic for your kids or have our holiday sads hit? And she's like,
Oh,
hit me with it.
mm,
It's like that constant, like, running of a list of, like, when the chips hit the floor and something is an emergency for me, do I have enough people on a roster to care that I'm in distress? Like, oh, starting a new doctor or a new gym, and they're like, "Who's your emergency contact?" I don't know my cat. Like, I don't know. My neighbor, so she'll go feed my cat if I'm in the hospital for a couple of days. Like, it's things like that and how our society perpetuates this idea of, like, no, you need a backup person to be there for you in an emergency because we're so individualized in this country that, like, no one's actually just naturally looking out for one another.
well, it's interesting when you talked about kind of the filtering process that you have. Like, can't tell that person she loves Christmas, oh wait, yeah. And it's you just prioritizing everybody else's needs, it seems like, above what you need in that moment. But I'm glad you ended up saying, I'm texting my friend. But even before you ask, can I say this right now? Or do you have capacity? It's like, when do you feel like you can just not worry about what anybody else thinks and say, this is how I'm feeling and I don't give a shit what is going on with anybody else this is me right now, and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna filter, I'm not gonna pretend. Do you have moments where you feel comfortable to do that in front of people?
When it's low stakes, and I'm like, people are gonna think it's funny that I'm screaming about this Taylor Swift concert, and at the end of the day, who cares that I didn't get to go to the Taylor Swift concert? By the way, I did get to go, so
Oh, thank
just for
God.
it
I
to
was on
get
the edge
be
of my seat.
fixed.
Um, your birthday is lumped in with whatever is going on with everybody else around that time of the year. Is it ever about you? Like, do you ever feel like this celebration is just about me in front of my family?
Well, my mom's sister used to take me for a solo thing on my birthday
Mm.
because we would go and visit grandma for Christmas and we would stay for a couple of days. And so my aunt would be like, I'm going to pick up Natalie and take her for a manicure. Or she also bought me my first cat. And that's why I'm friends with my aunt today.
When you mentioned that, having a not having a partner there in times where you kind of need that validation of like, yeah, that was a lot to go through, or
Hmm.
that was, it's okay to cry about this, or, all of that. Do you have a hard time trusting yourself? Like, do you struggle with self doubt? Like, was that as difficult as I thought? Or, do I really need to set a boundary? Do you struggle with that, not having a sounding board there?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the simple answer is yeah. And I think, we were the generation of kids who always grew up hearing that someone else had it worse than us,
Yeah.
or like I'll give you something to cry about. So
Mhm.
it's that whole like mindset of like when I have that first gut reaction of I don't want to do this. What I'll do is I'll test it out on all the wrong people. I'll be like, I don't think I should do this to my mom. And my mom will be like, "You definitely need to do that. That's what being a family is about." Click, call my
Mm.
aunt because my aunt's my friend. "I don't wanna do this." And she's like, I know why you feel that way, but, like, I really feel like you could." Meanwhile, my best friend is just running circles in her living room. We don't want to do this, and we know that we don't like doing things where there's no payoff emotionally, time wise, entertainment wise to us. If you're not going to get anything out of this except for crying in a parking lot, let's not get in the car.
Mm. Do you feel like being the person, whether past, presently, that, you feel like you need to be there to please your family in some way, or, you're afraid of disappointing them? Do you think that's made you emotionally unavailable in past relationships where the priority is I got to be there to support and emotionally support and do what I need to do for my family. Therefore, I can't be somebody else's number one in a partnership.
Oh no, because I'll run myself ragged to make sure that everyone is taken care of.
Mm.
And so when I was working theater and I was part of their education program, there were a lot of weekends that I had to work or a lot of evenings. But if that meant that I got into the car at 3 p.m. to drive 4 to 6 hours and arrive somewhere at 8 p.m. when everyone's packing up the party to say, I did it, I made it to the party, I did that.
Yeah.
If anything, it's made me too emotionally available for everyone else because that's my norm. I do this all the time where I go really deep, really fast with someone and I go, oh my gosh, what a great new friend I've made. And then I come out of the haze of new friendship a week or a couple weeks later and go, I don't like that person. And I think that nothing that person has ever said to me actually lines up with anything I believe about the world or people or how to treat other people. And then it's like, oh, I just went into like anti mode and I just anted that person through a bunch of dinners. And then it's like, what a great false sense of intimacy that we have.
Interesting. But yeah, you weren't being your true self through
No.
that. You're switching into the people pleaser mode. Does your sister have perfectionistic people pleaser tendencies? Me as the oldest daughter, and then the second oldest daughter in my family definitely has the people pleaser stuff going on, but
Yeah.
the middle daughter doesn't. And I'm like, I need more of that in my life, you know? I think we could both use that. But what is that dynamic like with your sister?
So, in order to be a people pleaser, you have to wake up out of a haze and be like, "Oh my god, I'm in a situation I'm not comfortable in at all." Where my sister avoids that at all costs.
Interesting. So she doesn't even put herself in those uncomfortable situations for her to be a people pleaser in a
Right,
certain
yeah.
way. Is there anything that's kind of helped you with realizing all of this for yourself? I mean, how did you hear about eldest daughter syndrome?
Well, eldest daughter syndrome was diagnosed within me through the medical, program of TikTok, where you're on TikTok
I've
and
heard
you're
of
like,
Dr. TikTok.
"Doctor
Yeah,
TikTok?"
yeah, it's
And
supposed to
you're
be
like,
really, really good.
Wait, I have that. Wait." And once you've had someone who cares about you ask you, like, "How much of your life has just been lived for other people and you being afraid that they're gonna talk shit about you and call you stupid when you're not in the room?" And it's like, "Possibly all of it, thank you."
What questions would you like people to stop asking you about being single? For me, it's like I don't need people to ask me when I'm having kids. Just assuming I'm having kids and because I'm married and we've been married for a little bit, that's that's the
Yeah,
obvious next step.
I so much of what I learned just by observing older women and what they will ask us or what they are surprised by
Yeah.
or things like that, it's like because they never thought it was the option, because our
Right.
mothers are the daughters of women who couldn't have credit cards.
Yeah.
This is how I trick people into not asking me the questions. This isn't actually a tip that anyone should follow, but I'm gonna give it anyways.
Best kind of tip.
Out gaslight the gaslighter. I just walk into the room, and if someone's like, "When are you gonna have kids, Natalie?" I'm gonna be like, "I have been telling you since I was 12 years old I don't wanna have kids. I've never wanted to have kids. I've never even held a baby." Like, and then they're so confused, they're like, "I guess Natalie's never wanted to have kids." At this point, I'm so out about it, I guess people have run out of chances to ask me. I think what I've come to realize is, like, people have been secretly worrying about me, but didn't have the guts to, like, ask me if everything was okay.
How did you find that out?
My dad and his wife, he told me, "Anne's been worried about you so much being alone and knowing that, like, employment hasn't been the easiest journey since your COVID layoff and all of it." And I was like, "Then why didn't anyone ask me if they could send me a Meyer gift card?" Like, you've
Yeah.
just been secretly worrying yourself to death and never thought, "Can I do anything to maybe alleviate the pressures that this economy puts on single people? If you're worried about me, please just say it." But it's that whole, "And we know that you don't like to hear that we're worried about you because you're strong and independent and brave and you don't need any help." Like,
I've never said that.
I, in fact, have called mid panic attack. And you've just told me, "But you know, Natalie, you're just so independent."
Well, it makes you it's like asks the question of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did you treat me a certain way so I had to become independent and therefore it reinforced, oh, you're independent? Or was I really an independent kid and then you saw that and you then treated me a certain way based on that? You know what I mean? It's like, what came first, really?
Or is independent your new term for spinster? Like,
Right. Or it's like, am I absolving myself of responsibility by calling you independent? I don't
yeah,
know. I'm so curious to know what your experience was like. You mentioned your parents got divorced as a teenager.
it was 3 days before my 22nd birthday, which is
Shut
on
up,
Christmas.
Natalie. Your birthdays are fucked, girl. Oh my God. Listen, you need to have a different birthday. Like, celebrate your birthday, sure, on Christmas, fine.
Yeah,
But you need to be somebody who celebrates their fucking half birthday, okay?
yeah,
And treat it like your real birthday. So,
yeah.
okay, so this was 3 days before your 22nd birthday, you said?
Yeah, because my parents' divorce happened in one of those ways that was sudden and volatile,
Okay.
under one of those unsavory reasons that someone would leave a house. My
Okay.
mom left my dad because of some text messages he found on her phone.
Okay,
So,
gotcha. Well, I'm
yeah.
interested to know how this affected you as an adult because my parents divorced when I was 3. I don't remember anything different than having 2 different households. So, what was that like having this, your parents under the same roof and then all of a sudden as an adult, you're going to different places?
So because my mom So because like the divorce wasn't like a mature agreement of like, we this has run this course, blah blah blah. My dad was blindsided. My dad got a lot of years of like grace and like upper hand and like high ground and like I get to control Christmas and summers and visits and stuff because your mom did a bad thing. Honestly, my mom and I had to have it was in my very first like adult solo apartment, and my mom just had to like walk through the reasons why she knew that her and my dad's relationship wasn't going to be forever. And they very closely matched some of the reasons why I had to move. Like I had to move away.
Move away
And
from your family, your parents' dynamic, or
well, just from like, it's very hard being a child in your childhood home when an emergency has happened and the adult in the room and the person who's always been the adult in the room is relying on you emotionally. And so I was like fleeing that situation and disassociating from that situation. Part of my anger reaction when my mom left my dad was that she was slowly giving me cryptic messages that she was about to leave my dad because she was going to do it in a very mature manner and like wait out the holidays or wait out my sister's college graduation or something or my graduation and then approach the conversation. And instead, text messages were found and we fled on Christmas, as you do. So I had found out that like I had been my mom's emotional confidant without actually consenting to that, and she was, like, processing things on me,
mm,
and I think that and so when my dad tried to process things on me, I, like, couldn't handle it. I forgave my mom before my sister forgave my mom, so I was often going to my mom's new house with her new partner by myself, and no matter what I was doing, I was pissing someone off, and I was siding with a wrong person.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, even yeah, even as a 22-year-old adult, you felt like in the middle of your parents' shit,
Yeah.
where a lot of the time, like, if a kid is going through their parents' divorce, they're literally trapped in the household with their parents, and if one of them is approaching their relationship as now you're kind of my emotional support animal, if you will,
Mhm.
that kid doesn't really know what's happening to them and they can't leave, but you still had a similar situation even though you can technically go somewhere,
Yeah.
and but you did have the wherewithal to be like, this something about this isn't right, right? I shouldn't be in the middle even though I'm an adult. And I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe your parents thought that you were more equipped to be that person because of you being an adult, but you are still their child even if you're an adult.
And instead of me ever getting to be the leader of my own processing when it came to my parents' divorce, that didn't come until about 3 to 5 years later when I had moved and my
Mm,
mom could come and visit me on her own and
right.
we could talk about things like adults.
No, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. Did witnessing your parents divorce at that age, how did that impact how you feel about relationships, marriage, partnership? I'd assume they were together for quite some time.
Yeah. One time a friend and I were talking about marriage and she said, the only reason I can get on board with marriage is because I'm on board with divorce. And it's not that like we should all be like, you'll make a great first husband,
Right.
like
Can't wait to be a divorcee.
a
Right,
hot
right, right.
divorcee. Uh, another friend who had grown up in Germany said that like Americans have this really weird relationship with divorce where they like count it as like a life failure. And she's like, man,
Mm,
if John and I divorce after 10 years, I'm just going to think that was a really great 10 years, good for us, and just kind of naturally progress through that. And so it made me, and I have a friend who is recently filing for divorce, and I just say 18 years doesn't have to be forever. Like
right,
the
right.
relationship that you're in can be good, can be bad, but it doesn't have to be forever. That's also a very privileged outlook of it as a woman who's never put like another person on any of her paperwork. Like I own this condo, my cat is my cat. Like
Yeah.
There's a lot of legality that like really ties you down to your marriage. And a lot of people cannot actually afford to get out of their marriage or aren't in a safe place to get out of a marriage or have
Absolutely.
kids that they can't provide for if they get out of a marriage.
Right.
But I always tell people, like, well, the moment you can, you should. Like, if it's not good, it's not good. And the moment you can, you should. So
Yeah.
yeah, my best friend and I talk about the fact that my mom left my dad a lot. And now it's like she's the hero of our Lifetime movie. Like if Lifetime had written her story, she would have been the hero instead of the villain.
Maybe I'll write a second movie just for you and your mom.
Thank you.
Well, Natalie, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you think is important for somebody tuning in right now who really resonates with, what you've said today? Do you want to share anything with them? And then also, where can people find you?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would just like everyone to walk away from is that a lot of the pressures that I used to put on myself as an eldest daughter or as the single daughter or as the newly queer daughter, they're invisible, which means that they don't actually exist.
Mm.
So an anchor question my best friend actually always brings myself to is, did someone convey to you that they were feeling that way, or did you convince yourself that someone was feeling that way?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
And as far as where you can find me, and thank you, Delaney, I didn't tell you this because we launched into this so quickly. When I sat down and started my podcast to all the men I've tolerated before, I did it because Self-Helpless was what was getting me through the quarantine because all I wanted was girlfriends to be in my house. And I couldn't have girlfriends in my house, but I could have you, Taylor, and Kelsey.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And you were Self-Helpless was the top. If I'm gonna be good at this, I wanna get on this show. Like, I wanna be a guest
Oh,
on this show. So, dreams come true, people.
dreams.
Manifestation is real.
Hell yes, I love it. Oh, well that's I'm so glad that we were there for you during quarantine. That is like the best news ever, and I loved chatting with you, and thank you so much for just being so open about all of this and your
Yeah,
experience and all the dynamics that, you're navigating. And oh yeah, and then did you plug your podcast where people can find
I
you?
didn't. No,
Okay.
I
Oh,
instead
you did it.
complimented
Perfect.
you. And then I went,
Yeah.
"There goes my plug." I plugged you instead. Uh, so my show is called To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. It drops everywhere you find podcasts on Thursdays. It is your weekly look into everyday misogyny. And when we are back airing new episodes in September, we're starting with the Tortured Poets department. And we also have rom com deep dives coming up. And yeah, I'm Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram, Natalie K124 on TikTok.
Incredible. Well, people got a lot to sift through over there. Go check it out. And thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
All right, go check out Natalie's podcast, and perhaps you too will have a new Hot Girl Christmas or other holiday tradition in the works for this year. And just a heads up, if you want to submit to be a guest on Self-Helpless as part of our subscriber series, we will be opening up submissions in spring of 2025. So stay tuned for that. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning in to Self-Helpless. You can find our brand new merch, Patreon community, and other fun goodies at selfhelplesspodcast.com. We'd be thrilled if you left an Apple Podcast review, shared this episode with a friend, or post about it on Instagram and tag us at Self-Helpless Podcast so we could repost you and say hi. As an independently produced show, we sincerely appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody.